Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the Guitar Show. Today's a very special edition. We're going to be doing, we're hanging out with a really good friend of mine, James Ingham, and basically we're going to be remembering the great Malian African guitar player Ali Farka Touré. And he was actually, it's his anniversary of his death. He was born on the 31st. Oh no, let me say that again. 31st of October 1939 in Timbuktu, Mali, and he died in Bamako, Mali, 6th of March 2006. And it's really cool to be hanging out with James because James has actually met him. I've never met, unfortunately, I never met Ali Farka Touré, the great man, but James did.
Well,
so
you've done a lot more with his music and his style than I was able to do, because I think I kind of went on this journey and kind of stopped in my mid-20s for a while and then sort of picked it up later, but I don't think I've developed as a guitarist since then. But that was quite something. And the lovely thing about him is there's something mysterious and not in a dark way, in a very beautiful way about him, and the way that his music, what his music can do to you, and also just the sheer kind of coincidences, the spooky what ifs. I think his journey began in terms of international recognition when Andy Kershaw was record shopping in Barbès. He was coming back from one of his trips in '87. I think actually to start this off, really have to say, without Andy Kershaw, an awful lot of this music that I've loved, and all of us, and also so many. Go on.
Charlie Gillett as well, wasn't it?
Charlie Gillett. Well, I think that they both used to swap notes. They knew each other well, and they'd swap notes if they both heard something great. And there was a whole kind of scene that supported this kind of music. Andy was shopping, and I think he had a few.
Sorry, James, do you want to just tell our viewers? A lot of them are American. Do you want to tell our viewers who are Charlie Gillett and Andy Kershaw?
Oh, well, I think Charlie Gillett had a show on Capital Radio, which was a London-based radio station, and he played a lot of what was termed by I think is it Tom Bruman? They had to think of a name to market this stuff, and he came up with the term world music. I'm not sure he was really happy about that, but we're all lumbered with it. But Charlie used to play a lot of that, and then Andy Kershaw joined Radio 1 as a sort of rock pop DJ, but was playing all of this other stuff, and quickly developed an identity as the guy all the other people at Radio 1 would say that plays all that weird stuff. And he said he's just good music, and he wasn't going to play sharp.
He's a great character, isn't he? He's a great guy, isn't
he? He's quite something. And I was listening, his book No Off Switches, you've got to get it. I downloaded the audio of it when I put my back out a few weeks ago and was just listening to that. But he was record shopping, and I thought he must be behind this. And he was going through, he bought all these records. He was clearly going to spend a lot of money. And the guy behind the till, I think Andy was leaving town that day and just wanted to spend his spare local currency. And right at the back of this rack in a bargain bin section of a record shop.
Was he in France?
Was he in France, in Barbès.
Yeah.
He was in the Arab quarter of Paris, which is where you get all the nice clothes and the nice African stuff. I was there about 10 years ago, but terribly hungover. But yeah, so Andy found this record, and it was a Red album, and all it said on.
Let's put it up on the.
You've got that. It's famously known as the Red Album. It was just untitled at the time, and
guys, let me just share this.
He just said it that he wasn't even holding a guitar on the cover. He was just sitting there, there it is, and it just said Ali Farka Touré, and there was just something. He couldn't explain why, but he picked it up, and the guy behind the till virtually said, "You can have that if you're buying all this. I'll just throw that in for next to nothing."
It's a great album cover. Look at that album.
It's there's something about it. It's a little, Andy's got a good eye for these things, and he was probably thinking that's shades of Highway 61 revisited, or bringing it all back home. Sorry, there's Dylan hanging out on the steps somewhere, but he got it home, and he listened to all the things that he was expecting to. He kind of knew what he was buying, but then he put this on, and he just said, "Can I swear? I probably can't, but
go on."
Bloody hell! What's this? Because he immediately recognized the music of Lightning Hopkins and some of the Delta blues players whose playing was very, very raw and ragged and arrhythmic and
sort of Lightning Hopkins and all those kind of.
You know. I mean, Ali got compared to John Lee Hooker, which isn't a bad thing, but I think as Andy's feeling was that it was more like Lightning Hopkins. But he played some of these tracks on his fairly new radio show, and of course the whole thing erupted from there. And like I said, there was a network. There was the radio show. There were the clubs, loads of clubs to play in London and all around the country. There were the record shops. Do
you remember that Darbuka?
Where was that?
That was in London, in the I think it was near Liverpool Street. It's Darbuka. Was it called?
I don't know. I remember getting dragged downstairs to a club, but I think David Oladuni and a few other people dragged me down to a few places, and I didn't even know where I was going.
That may be Momo's, because that used to be downstairs. Momo's. That was.
It could be. The thing is, it would always be. You'd get there at 11, half 11, and things wouldn't really start happening till 1 a.m. You know, I remember trying to get back from these places. Where am I? But yeah, there was the what's the word? There was the culture to support a visiting artist like this, and it's a bit like in the 50s when blues was a very underground thing, and Chris Barber, who's just passed away, and Alexis Corner, they brought Big Bill Broonzy over in the late 50s.
That's right, yeah.
And there were the jazz clubs to support this, and there was also the left wing movement, which they were keen to support him as well. And of course, Broonzy turned up here and told Alexis Corner that all the other bluesmen that he loved were dead, which wasn't true. He was just trying to protect his patch. But it was a bit like that when Ali came over. There were places to play almost instantly, and there were lots of students listening to Andy Kershaw's show because they all loved John Peel.
Yeah.
And John and Andy, I think initially John was a bit threatened because Andy had been brought in to sort of replace him, because the BBC were trying to edge John Peel out of the picture for years. And in fact, I think once John Walters, who produced all those shows, and Peel, they bonded, and then they just formed this terrible trio. And they were almost like a radio station within a radio station. And there was a lovely period when John Peel's show and Kershaw's show, there was a crossover. Well, Andy's just come in with it. What have you got there, Andy? Well, listen to this. And oh my goodness. And
that's a great accent of Andy Kershaw.
I used to. Because
Andy Kershaw was at Live Aid, wasn't he? The Live Aid concert.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
Yeah, he was.
That's so funny.
A hilarious interviewer, wasn't he?
He had that whole. One of the funny scenes in the book is when they had some dead time and there was some sound problem, and so he had to just interview someone and yabber. And they were saying, "Okay, Andy, we got 10 seconds. We got John Hurt for you." He's like, "What? And there's all this noise. John Hurt, 10, 9, 8. Who's John Hurt? Elephant Man. So John Hurt sat there and he's thinking Elephant Man. And I think he probably thought, has he got something to do with elephants and conservation? And he said, basically, John Hurt was so sweet because he sort of interviewed himself. And they met years later. And he says, you do realize, don't you, that I had absolutely no idea who you were. So I think so, dear boy, but we got through it, didn't we? But so Andy had this platform and this show, and what a time to be sort of 17, 18, 19, which I was. I was at art college and tuning into this show, and to be in London at that time, I couldn't have wished to be anywhere else. If you'd put me anywhere else on the planet, I wanted to.
World music scene, which is
London,
I think it's declined a little bit. Even would you say?
Recently? Oh, completely. It's changed completely.
When I first came to London 10, 15 years ago, I was playing gigging everywhere in the world music. I was playing African music like every night of the week.
It was pretty good, yeah.
Crazy.
It was a great scene back in the 80s and 90s. It was a bit like they talk about the folk clubs in the late 60s, early 70s, where there were hundreds of places to play. And if you were Sandy Denny, you could play 3 different places in one night if you wanted to. It reminds me of the golden days of the music hall in the 1880s, where some performers would play 4 or 5 different halls in one night if they had a good coachman to just take them there. This is what happens with great scenes in music. And you have these peaks and troughs. Where we are now, which is another story, and what's happened to Mali since Ali died, let's not go there yet. But at that point, it was wonderful because I heard this music, and the first song I heard was Sherry, which I used to request at gigs. I saw that
I'll tell you what, James, let's take this point just so this is James has actually emailed me a recording of Sherry that he recorded at a gig. So we're gonna attempt to
this is
right now.
This is at Ronnie Scott's jazz club in 1990.
And do you want to just give us a little bit background about the song?
He was about to play something, and I'd had a couple of sherbets and just went, Sherry, like this. And he goes, okay. He always used to, honor me with this because it was my favorite piece of music of his at the time. So he stopped what he was doing and chewed the guitar.
Are you happy? Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay.
Wow.
Okay,
oh man,
beautiful bit of playing there.
Isn't that lovely? It's God, you made me cry.
Well,
boy.
We're remembering, guys. Today we're remembering the great Farka Toure, the best probably guitar player ever from Africa. He was a Jimi Hendrix of Africa.
I think so. I think you've got Franco and a lot of the people, the Zairian guys, and Essie Roji from Sierra Leone, Konimo from Ghana. Actually, no, I shouldn't, because people have favorites, and there were others, and obviously he listened to a lot of there were people he couldn't have just come out of nowhere, and there was a guitarist called Kante Faseli who was part of the African dance troupe.
Was he was from Guinea, wasn't he? He was from
That's right. And there's a lot of sort of
because the Guinean guitar players are amazing. If you go anywhere in North Africa, West Africa, you know, the Guinean guys, they were always the best guitar players, you know.
I think that's who he was listening to, and I think it was 1956 when he first heard and got his first guitar and got into it. Hence that song Synchronicity. You know, that instrumental, that tour de force of an instrumental. But so yeah, I heard that he was playing in London, and I think I went out to try and find an album. I couldn't find the red or the green. There was a shop, I don't know if you remember, no, you wouldn't. Colette's was a music shop. It was opposite Denmark Street, and it was a bookshop, a left-wing bookshop, and I think it had been associated with the folk scene and the jazz scene. Davy Graham had known the people that ran Colette's. He'd been very closely involved with them back in the 60s. And then they moved to another location. And until they got firebombed for stocking a book, which in fact they made a big deal about the fact that they didn't stock the Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. But they got firebombed anyway, and all the sprinklers went off and trashed everything, so they had to close it all down. But there was a record department in the basement. Excuse me. And it was run, one of the guys that worked there was Dave Peabody. Do you know Dave?
Of course I do.
Of course. Dave, what a man. What a great guy. He's the London sort of Piedmont blues style guitar player singer. He's great. Well, he brought Honey Boy Edwards over and a whole bunch of other people, and that's another story. And he was friends with Bob Brunning, who I knew. It all seemed to connect up. Joanne Kelly and stuff. He hosted the Joanne Kelly tribute night when she passed away. But there was this guy that worked in the record department down there, and I just got to know him. This fellow with a moustache and a little hat, and very friendly. And I remember picking this album up.
Yes.
Which has got a signature on it now. I think Ali signed it. Ali signed my vinyls for me. Brilliant. But I picked this album up. Sorry, it's shining, isn't it? I picked this up, and the guy behind the till just said, "Great album, great album." I didn't realize he'd taken the album cover photo.
Oh, had he? Really?
Dave Peabody, he took this picture.
No way.
And years so
he
later,
must be friends with Andy Kershaw and Charlie Gillett. He must have been friends with those guys.
I think everyone seemed to know each other. And in fact, the very last time I saw Ali,
Jamie Renton. Do you know Jamie Renton?
Oh, Jamie! I've done gigs for Jamie.
Jamie, I'm going to put a shout out to Jamie.
I love Jamie. We love you. We love you, man. He really helped me when I had my little palm wine trio going on. He'd always give us gigs, and what a lovely fella. Cool fella. It was like a family, and maybe that scene is still in London. I left London for about 5 or 6 years, but yeah, he took the album cover, and this picture does look like it was taken out in the fields of Mali, whatever. Do you know where that photo? Essex. You know what?
Essex. That's where I'm from. I'm from Essex. It's from. So
you were probably there when it was taken, wandering around on your little push bike. Yeah. And what happened was Dave was telling me years later, I think it was at Bob Brunning's wake, we were talking about Ali Farka, and he said,
"That's amazing," because I've always thought that was in Timbuktu or somewhere.
It's by the side of it. It's in Essex, in a field near Essex, and he told me that Ali was someone that played great music, but he was somebody that, if you were going to get stuck in a lift with a musician, if you got stuck in a lift with Keith Richards, it'd be interesting, but you wouldn't get out of that lift. If you were going to get stuck in a lift with somebody, Ali would have been the guy that would have known how it was designed. He would have got you out there. And what happened was their car broke down. Yeah. Dave's automobile, which I think was probably a bit of an old banger, it completely conked out and died. And obviously no mobile phones in those days. They were thinking about how do we get hold of AA and the RAC and how we covered and what are we going to do? Oh my God. Meanwhile, the boots, I know nothing about cars, but the lid of the bonnet's gone up, and Ali's in there, and he's doing this and he's doing that, and he's pulling this and he's disconnecting that. And to cut a long story short, within 10 minutes, they're back on the road. Incredible. No problem.
It doesn't surprise me.
He was somebody that could, because of his life experience, having to be self-sufficient. He was one of 9 children. His mother and father, the same parents. He had 11 children. He'd fathered 11 children when he died. They had different mums, but his parents, it was the same mum and dad, and he was the only survivor out of 10 children.
That's right. Yeah, I heard that he I think 9 had died or something, wasn't it?
That's right. His oldest sibling was born in 1922. He was born in 1939. So the fact that he survived, and that's where his nickname Farka, donkey, the stubborn, this guy's not going to give up. He's tough.
Yeah.
So he fixed Dave's car and off they went. And you just got the feeling that no matter what happened,
Yeah.
he'd be able to fix it. He'd sort you out. So
and let's talk a little bit about his early beginnings, because he was born on the Niger River. I think he was born in he was born in Timbuktu, which is actually on the river Niger, because that was where a lot of explorers used to go up that river to try and get to this legendary place called Timbuktu, and they'd end up dying, getting killed, along the way. So it was quite, I think, English explorers made it, but then died on the way back. But so it's quite a famous place. But and then he grew up, I think, closer towards Bamako, which is the capital of Mali, in a place called Funky. I don't know how.
Funky.
Funky.
Funky. Yeah, what a name.
And his tribe was Songhai, because there's a lot of languages. Songhai, and there was a lot of language. There's a lot of languages in Mali, So there's Fulani. Fula is a very sort of popular. There's Peul, there's Bambara. There's all these. And I think normally your average Malian, your average Malian can speak at least 2 or 3 languages, and the performers that I perform with when I've been in Africa, they always do a few songs in a different language.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this is a Bambara song, this is a Fula song, this is a, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
But his tribe, I think, was the Songhai. And for example, somebody like Salif Keita was a different tribe. So it sang in a different language, So there's they're from the different parts, and so that's what's interesting. It's like the kind of there's so much to dig into this music. It's not it's a real rabbit hole that you go down when you start getting into this sort of African music.
It's impossible. Even Ali himself said when he was talking about the music and the culture, it's impossible to know everything. He would I was reading that he used to spend 3 hours a week on a Saturday doing nothing but playing the guitar. And he would just sit in his garden, a bit like Peter Green. I was reading that his neighbours were saying towards the end of his life, he was chatting about him last week. He would sit out in the garden in the sunshine and just play the guitar. And then people that wanted to play with Peter, and it's the same with Ali, people locally would have come to want to play with him. And after he'd had an hour or two of just on his own, he would then invite people to come along and join him, and they'd all play together. The rest of the week was very structured in terms of the farm. He considered himself mainly a farmer, and he shouldered so much responsibility in his life, and he took it very seriously. And he just happened to be this incredible musician as well. There were so many things about that guy.
Yeah, and he used to play in the National Radio Orchestra of Mali.
Yeah.
And he was already quite a big name, because I think the way that they met him was really through Toumane Diabaté. Toumane Diabaté. There's three dudes. There's Toumane Diabaté, there's Alafaka Toure, and then there's Baseku Kouati, who was the Ngoni player. And
that's a good mix, isn't it? That's a good.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Boubacar Traoré was another great guitarist as well. Did you ever hear him?
I didn't. I never saw him. I've seen him on French TV. But I've never seen him.
He's someone. He's got the most. I had a vinyl of his once, called Mariama, which is an absolutely stunning, ethereal, wow album. But the needle actually bounced off the vinyl when his voice came in. Mariama, boom, boom! He just couldn't handle the volume. Another great. He mainly played acoustic. Whoa!
So this is a young me with a lot more hair. I wish I still had that hair. I had hair like a lion.
Yeah.
Like a lion's mane. And on the left, this is Toumane Diabaté.
Excellent.
And we've just done a concert. This is Jabel, who I did an album with. Jabel Sissoko next to me. It's great.
That's something. That's great.
And the gentleman next in between Toumane and Jabel, I can never remember his name, but he's a big legend in the African world music scene. But I hate myself for not remembering. But that's Toumane on the left, and he is can you tell us what he was like meeting? What was it like meeting Alafaka Touré? What was he like as a person?
I was, I would have been 18. It was 1988, and it was he was playing in a little club, the Town and Country Club 2 in Highbury and Islington, which I think later became, was it the Tram Shed, or it had a different name. It was a nice small club, and I just went and made sure I was at the front. And I remember when he walked in through the darkened hall, and I was kind of like, wow, when you very seldom do you meet someone who has that aura. And I don't care how pretentious this sounds, he really did. You'd kind of look, there he is. And when he came on stage, I think he played for about an hour and a bit, swapping between electric and acoustic guitar, and he just had one musician with him, Amadou Cissé, who played an upturned gourd, clickety 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 click. And I'd seen one clip of him and just decided, I've got to go and see this guy. And so there he was. And so there he appeared, and he was playing. It was everything I could have wanted and more. There you go. That's the item. You see, I've got one of these growing on the top of my head now. And it's becoming more and more.
Likewise.
I used to have one. Well, actually, the thing about that is it's.
But no, this is called a calabash, isn't it? And like all the calabash players that I've performed with always seem to hit it like this and with their knuckles. But Farka Tourés were hitting it with the sticks, weren't they? So
well, I think that these guys used the sides of their hands as well. There was a real technique to it.
Yeah, and this is a small one, by the way. They're in 3 times the size that normally professional guys use.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit like the Imbiras. They're all shapes and sizes. But I know that it's recently, in the last few years, it's becoming quite popular with a lot of young musicians, drummers. Like there's a guy called Arthur Newell, who's a really brilliant drummer, Lisa Marini's fella. They're a great team, and they're recording at the moment, and they're using this. I gave him an Ali Farka CD, but he's a genius doing that. But at the time, I thought, this is so sparse, but it's so hypnotic, and it's so cheap. If you live in London, you can go to Brixton Market and pick one of these up relatively cheaply. So he played amazingly. What I was aware of was that he didn't seem to have any road crew with him. It was just the two of them. And my mum used to always say when I left the house, passport, money, keys, handkerchief. And I always used to have a really, this is random, but I had a
passport.
Yeah, that was a joke. She'd say that to my dad if he was traveling, or her dad. But it was one of those things, don't forget the essentials. And one of the essentials was a nice ironed, clean hanky. Ali was pouring with sweat while he was playing. And I was on, and he's looking at it, and he's smiling, and then he's kind of looking uncomfortable, and he's looking at me, and I was looking to see who's, is there a towel or anything? He didn't really seem to have roadies. So I felt great. I had this really nice, clean, and he went like this, and it was something almost biblical, like Veronica wipes, I'm sorry, but it really was. And so he took this and he mopped everywhere, and he was just like, great. Thank you.
How many people were watching? How many people were there?
Do you know what? I'm not really sure. I think it had filled up behind me. I was so transfixed. I kept that handkerchief for years. And when I was moving house, it was in a sealed bag, and it had grown all these cultures of fungus on it. And somebody said to me, you could probably grow him. He's probably got his deer, but no, I'm afraid I had to throw it out. But somebody came up to me after the show, and I now realize it was Lucy Duran, the musicologist, who I later spoke to at SOAS, but she just said, "Excuse me, I just wanted to say to you, I'm sorry. I was watching the show, and I watched you, and I just want you to know that from the moment he came on stage to the moment he left, you smiled broadly and continuously, and I have never seen anyone look as happy." And then she was gone, and I thought, I wasn't aware, but when he was on stage, I was elated, euphoric. I was so happy. And I went, and he played the following night, and I made my brother come along. And then my brother went and saw him in Liverpool, and you've got to hear this guy. And so I was picking up these albums, like there's this green one. And I like this one.
That's a great shot, isn't it?
That's a great one.
Just imagine, that's Bamako, isn't it? That must be Bamako. Yeah.
He looks like he's built the guitar himself. And again,
it's definitely not Basildon or Billy.
It's not Basildon. No, maybe it's Collier's Wood, actually. Yeah, there's Andrew on the bench. It's Collier's Wood. No, but I had these albums, I got them signed, and it was really just a way of getting there and saying thanks. And I guess the people that fans of the Sax Coburg Goaters or whatever they call it, there's something about being in the presence of royalty. Well, I recognize him. I knew that I was in the presence of somebody remarkable, and I just remember as a teenager, and I'd go and see him every time he played, and then there was a woman that used to spend time with him that would translate. He would speak French to her, and I would speak, and she was the mediator. Bless her. I think her name was Anne. Lovely, lovely woman who worked for the record company and really looked after him. And so I was able to just converse with him. And then the next time I came along, I bought him a bunch of photos. I don't know if you can. Do you have those pictures?
Yes, I do.
Because I took some pictures at that show.
So let's just have a look. Let's also mention Nick Gold as well, because Nick.
Oh man, yeah, of course,
the record owner of World Circuit Records.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And he actually went out to. I think this is, he actually asked Touré Diabati, the kora player who I showed you a photo of. He asked, is this guy Alpha Toure? Do you know him? Have you ever heard of him? And Touré said, yeah, he's famous. He's very famous. Let me just show you a photo of Nick Gold first. And then...
it was a team effort without Nick and without the initial push from everyone. It was a team effort to get this to the international state that it reached. Yeah. So
that's Nick Gold in Mali with the great man. And notice that guitar. We're going to talk more about this guitar in a minute, but so Nick Gold was, really very, very important in, spreading the word about this great man. So let me just show you a photo of. So this photo here, James, you can tell us about this photo when I get it up.
Let's see. There are some later ones. I've sent Ramon a bunch of photos. They're not. I managed to. Yeah, I mean, there he is. That's the first time I saw him. Just look. That's that explosion of joy on his face.
Is that when you gave him the handkerchief?
It might be that night. He was pouring sweat. Even the guitar. I remember seeing Steve Marriott. Whenever Steve Marriott performed, he would sweat and his guitar would sweat. He gave everything to his performances. This was the same thing. What happened as well that night was that he broke a guitar string.
Right.
And he didn't have any roadies or anyone. So I just kind of pointed to his acoustic. Yeah. And I went to side stage and put a new string on the guitar. He played acoustic for a couple of songs.
You had some guitar strings with you?
No, he had some. He just wasn't able.
Oh, okay, right, gotcha.
In the middle of the show. Normally you'd have someone that would help you.
Yeah, of course,
yeah. I mean, the Stones say, you break a guitar string. Now they just hand you a new guitar. Yeah. It was very, very, he was traveling light. And I think that to be able to, I thought, oh my God, am I going to get this right?
And so that was that night. So here's the deal. This guitar here, guys, let's look at this guitar, because we're the Guitar Show channel. We've got to talk about guitars, haven't we?
Yeah.
Do we, James?
It's called a Power Sonic, I think.
Yeah, it's called a Seiwa Power Sonic, which was actually a cheap version of an Ibanez. So it was like Epiphone is to Gibson, And this thing had a speaker in the middle, didn't it, James?
I went out looking for something similar, and I couldn't find anything quite like it, except I managed to get hold of. I'll show you this now while we're on the subject, because not long afterwards I picked up this Ibanez. It's an AR-50, I think.
So this was probably a better quality guitar, wasn't it?
It's a heavy guitar.
Yeah.
And it was all black for years and years and years, until the very last time I went to see him. Yeah. And I'd carved this out, as it were, stripped it down to the wood on the off chance that I might be able to get him to sign it.
Yeah.
And by contrast, the first time I went to see him, you could just roll up there, buy a ticket. The number of times I went to see him and just would sit on the stage, or small little venues. I saw him at the Grand Theatre in Clapham. That was a lovely night, a summer night in 1992. And again, it was opened by Dan Leno, the old music hall guy. But there he was. And that was taken at the Town and Country Club gig. I didn't want to touch the guitar, but I wanted to photograph it. And then just afterwards, I went and spoke to him for the first time. But the last time I saw him, many years later, obviously, I mean, I had some great nights. I saw him down in Brighton once. I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, please do.
There was something. Well, there's something a little bit spooky's the wrong word, but he just seemed to. It was almost like prayers being answered. And I went down there with my dear friend Essie Roji, the palm wine guitarist. We went down. He was playing at Brighton at the WOMAD Festival in 1992. It was a December Christmas show, and Ali Farka was the headliner.
Right.
And I think Roji wanted to be up on the main stage too, but he was playing in a side room, and he very kindly let me stick around to watch Ali Farka as well. So I went running to the stage, and I was worried Essie would be jealous. I was sort of roadieing for him, and he was my mentor, and taught me so much. And I really wanted them to meet each other. And I thought, I want them to meet, and I couldn't work out how that was going to happen, because Roji was, 65, getting a little bit old. He had a heart condition that we didn't even know about then. So he was getting tired. Right. So we were getting ready to leave and go back. And I'd seen Ali, I'd seen my two favorite African guitarists in one day. Yeah. And I just had the back of my mind, I really want them to see each other, And so I pressed the button for the lift, and the conference centre in Brighton was massive.
Yeah.
It's where the chance of the lift door opening at that precise second, and Ali Farka and his entire entourage being in that lift at that moment, you couldn't have scripted it more perfectly, because I was there with Roji. This is 92, and he's.
Is this a photo of you two guys with?
Well, no, that's one of his percussionists. That's the very last time I saw him.
Okay.
That's at the Barbican, actually. So I didn't get a picture of Roji and Ali together.
Tell us about the last time you saw him, actually, because that would be a very interesting story.
Well, this is years later, and I was going through a terrible time in my life, and all this old certainties had disintegrated, and I was reading Andy Kershaw's book and listening to it, and he went through something similar at the same sort of time, and I thought, Ali Farka's playing, and it had sold out. I couldn't get a ticket, and I was, oh no, and I really wasn't expecting him to come back and play ever again. If
anyone should have got a ticket, it's you.
And
just for that handkerchief.
I went up to the Barbican and just said, please, they said, listen, if we get a return, we'll give you a call. No mobile phones. And my landline went a couple of weeks later. Is that James? We've got a spare ticket. You can pick it up at the box office on. Wow. So I stripped this guitar down to the wood just on that. And I thought, I'm going to go for it. And I managed to get in, and I've got to confess something here, because I had the guitar in a case, and it was packed out, and everyone was there. It was to see the contrast between seeing him in a little club and then seeing him at a sold-out Barbican with this big band. And Tamani was supposed to be on the bill that night, right? Mm-hmm. And he was doing a Gary Moore, basically. He was late, he was running really late. So Tamani didn't turn up till the last 10 minutes. And for me, it just meant Ali was playing more. He had more people with him. I much preferred.
Was Baseka Kouati playing Nangadi for him?
I believe so. It was a big event, and I prefer hearing him, a bit like Johnny Hooker as well, just hearing him and a guitar with minimal percussion. But it was lovely to see that the ultimate success story. What I didn't know at the time was the end of his life. I had no idea he was ill. I'd been out of London for a long time, and everyone I think on the scene kind of knew that he was ill. Andy Kershaw said that he knew it would be the last time he'd see him, the last time they saw each other. But I don't know if you've seen Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, when he's trying to get into Hollywood. So he just blends in with a crowd of actors. And anyway, don't worry about it. But I just had the guitar on the back, and I blended in with a bunch of people coming off the stage. And someone said, "Who are you?" I said, James Ingham, World Circuit. Oh, come on then. Okay, so I blagged my way backstage. I'm sorry. But there I was. And then there was a maze of rooms. And I was looking around, and I was lost. I didn't know where I was, what to do. And I just saw one room. And I just, almost in a hypnotic trance, I just walked straight to it, knocked on the door.
Yeah.
And I heard her sort of come in, or whatever it was. Yeah. And I opened the door, and there he is, on his own in this dressing room in an armchair, and he just held his arms open And I just walked in and we just had this big hug. And I mean, I was in tears. And I think he was saying something along the lines of, it's not, you know, in French, like, it's okay. It's all right. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I'm fine. And looking back, after I realized how ill he was probably saying, it's okay. Don't worry. He probably thought I was tearful because I knew that he was dying, and I did not know. I was tearful because I just, wow, I can connect with this guy again. All is not lost. If this guy's still here, doesn't matter what's going on in my personal life or how awful things have been. This guy's here. He's playing, and we had a lovely time. And then his friend came in, the woman Anne, who used to translate for him, and she sat with us. And I had a John Lee Hooker album, signed Hooker album, which I gave him. Wow! And then I just asked him, you know, please, could you? I mean, there's no way, if I'd known that he was ill, that I would have got him to sign a guitar. I mean, that's I know one of George Harrison's doctors did this and got into trouble with the family. Oh, come on, George, you can do it. G-E, you know.
Oh my God.
I didn't know. And we had a lovely time, a lovely chat. And then the room started to fill with people. Joe Boyd's in there. Dave Peabody was there. And it was a lovely event. And I got this. Can you see that?
And he signed that.
That's his signature in a sort of pointy, whatever it's called, black pointy. There we go. Yeah. So I thought,
wonderful.
And this used to happen to me when I go and see him in a London club, and then you've got to cope with the tube, and in your mind you're in Timbuktu. You've been taken to another planet, and suddenly you've got to cope with the Northern Line, going back to South Wimbledon. And I remember getting out of the Barbican and having the same thought that I had when I was going there. How do I get out of here? I'm completely lost. It occurred to me that I needed to get a plastic plate fitted. I'll just finish the story with this.
Yeah.
I wanted I wanted the signature protected, clear plastic. That will do me. And I knew a luthier down in Dorset, Lee Norris, builds these lutes and stuff. And I remember taking this guitar down to him and explaining, could you just fit something clear that will protect this? Well, I've got a few jobs on at the moment. I'll sort it out in a you know. Yeah. It was weeks until he got round to sorting this out and dealing with it. Yeah. And what happened to him? I gave him a cassette tape, and because he was like Ali, just listened to cassettes. I gave Ali a cassette of Davy Graham, and I gave Davy Graham one of Ali's CDs. You know, you're the only peers on the planet, kind of thing. But yeah, so Lee's getting to work to fix this plate onto the guitar, and he's put my cassette of Ali Farka into his machine, and he's gone to work, and then he's pressed play, and he's realized it's not turned on at the switch on the wall. And this is where Ali's kind of something quite surreal and otherworldly about him. He went over and flipped the switch on the machine, this little old cassette player. Suddenly Ali's music's pouring out of the speaker, and he's getting to work to fix this onto the guitar that Ali's signed. And then the song ended. That was Ali Farka Touré, the African musician who died today and what he'd done is it was on radio, not tape, the setting of the machine. And at that precise moment, the news came through that Ali had passed away. So that, and he just said, James, don't do that to me again. He had to sort of down tools for the day and just go and have a cup of tea and a cigarette and maybe, there was something quite magical in synchronicity, the synchronicity of Ali. Well, and getting back to Andy, just picking that random record up and the guy saying, oh, you can have that. This whole journey probably wouldn't have happened if. So, you know, kudos to Andy Kershaw, you know, and Charlie Gillett. I'm going to mention Charlie Gillett as well, but he was Charlie, bless him. Yeah. I mean, Andy's still around. In fact, he lives not far from me in Todmorden. And so let's play it. James, let's play a little bit. Let's play a little bit. You're gonna play us a little bit of a song that you actually heard him play, and then you've taken it. Yeah. Oh God, I don't know. On the guitar that says. Well, I think actually this is okay. I don't really know if I should, because you're the guy that really knows how to play this stuff. I stopped playing for a long time, and I'm out of practice. I'm archiving tape at the moment, so I'm not really. I'm going to fluff this, but I think he was listening to Facile, the guitarist, and it's like. you know, that kind of thing. But Ali's thing was. Yeah, I'm not going to play actually.
No, that's amazing.
My chop, but that's the
great.
octaves, you know that.
Yeah.
Whereas I was used to playing the palm wine stuff is very kind of, you know, that thing with the octaves. That was something I think he picked up. But I think you should play. You've been practicing. I've not.
Well, I was going to say about the octaves because
it's very distinctive. It's a very distinctive thing, rather than like the Congolese is like
that was that kind of. If I can remember this one. That kind of sort of style, you know.
Yeah.
That one you were doing. And then he'd kind of do but that he kind of, well, that was more of a Tuareg sort of thing. But he'd now this tuning here.
Oh, he showed me that tuning. I was doing it wrong. I was tuning down, you know, like G open tuning.
Yeah.
To play things like Sherry. And he said, no, you tune it up.
And he said, this tuning here, you must never play this after midnight, because if you do, you bring evil spirits in. He was really good at kind of keeping that.
Yeah. Well,
that kind of that drone.
It was a hypnotic thing. When you go and see him, I think that eventually it'd be, whoa, you know, what have I taken? What was in that drink? Because I mean, really, and it's incredibly powerful.
You know, he'd just keep something going and then he'd improvise.
Yeah.
But my favorite tune was the. That kind of sort of style. It's really, really sort of, you know, and he did many different styles and had a lot of different influences as well, didn't he?
Yeah. To pick a favorite piece, I mean, Sherry's the one that I first heard, which I just love. Caddy Caddy was, I think, Andy Kershaw's. He requested that when they met up at the festival in the desert.
Yeah.
You know, that one where you got Robert Plant to come from one tent and join Ali, and and they ended up jamming together.
So Led Zeppelin's singer went to visit Mali and hang out with Farka Touré,
Yeah,
and he was a big fan of his. Not many people know that, do they?
No, they're not. They don't. They don't. But I remember that they turned up at a Davy Graham gig once. Page or maybe it was Bert Jansch. I can't remember. And I wanted to say something along the lines of, thieves operate in this area. Please be careful, no one steals it. I'm sorry, everybody, but it has to be said. But no, I think that was kind of nice. But there's that song Synchronicity. If I would urge anyone to listen just from a musical point of view, if you want to hear how beautiful, it's not possible to despair when you listen to that. It's got to be said that he suffered a great deal in his life, and then he got compared to, he's called a blues man, and he really didn't like that. He didn't like the association with, the womanizing, the drinking, that kind of debauched lifestyle.
Because he was kind of like a noble figure in his community, wasn't he?
Very much. And I think that, Robert Johnson had a tragedy, didn't he? His wife died in childbirth, but this happened to Ali too, and I think they both reacted differently. Well,
he considered that a lot of the blues guys were, because when people said when people played him, like Robert Johnson's music, Farka Touré said, quote, he said, this guy sounds African. This is African music.
Yeah, but I think that, when you've got lyrics like, me and the devil that walking side by side, I'm going to beat my woman till I get satisfied. Frankly, I'm not interested in you. I don't want to know about that. And that's not what the music's about. Ali Farka's stuff was more about the land, respect for nature, taking responsibility, being strong, kindness, love, all the things that we really need more now than ever. And I think that that's why he's a hero. If you're going to have a hero, I don't really think the hero's got to be yourself, but I don't think I'll ever meet anyone quite like him.
His playing was when he was singing and playing.
Well, that's the other thing. I've sat there trying to sweat to work out this done. Your playing's just out of this world, man. You definitely.
No, I need to practice.
Well, his thing, like I said, was to practice every Saturday for 3 hours, and it's something I think we've all got to take time out if we've got a passion to actually pursue it. And I always had all kinds of problems in my life, but whenever I went and saw him, they would disappear. And also, it puts your own problems in perspective. I think that there was something very very noble about him. Yes. And just that last time I saw him, and just choosing that one room out of a whole maze of, and because I wasn't supposed to be there, I didn't know what room to go into, and there he was. And there's something going on there. He would rise every morning at 6 and go down to the mosque and pray for 2 hours and then go back to bed. No, he'd be up at 4. Up at 4, then back home, couple more hours sleep, and then they'd all have. He invited everyone for breakfast. You should speak. Do you know Charles Shaw Murray?
Yeah, I do. He reviewed my first ever album.
Good for him.
He gave it a really good review. Actually, Charles Shaw, because of that review, I got my first record deal. So God bless you.
There you go. Well, he used to come down to BB's Blues Club with his band. I think it's interesting when people like Adam Blake and Charles Shaw Murray leave London. There's a problem.
Adam Blake is a class act.
He's wonderful, and I never really got to know him, but he's one of the few.
I played with him once. He's brilliant.
Well, when there's somebody busking. Someone's busking. I don't like stopping and listening, but I couldn't help it when I lived in Notting Hill because he was. This guy really knows his stuff. But Charles Shaw Murray is one of the few people that actually made it to Mali and went to visit Ali in his home and interviewed him there. He did,
wow. And you know what he did? He sent me a message on Facebook and he told me the tuning. That tuning, there's a special tuning. Which I basically there's another tuning where you tune up to F and you tune your B string to a C. Okay.
Do you know, I've never
A D G G C E. Sorry.
This is going to be my homework later, because I think I realized that there's only so much you can bite off. And I was learning palm wine from Roji, and I mastered that. But in terms of Ali's stuff, there's so much stuff that I don't know. But in terms of being intrepid and actually going and visiting him, Ali did invite me. I played one of my songs for him backstage once
Yeah.
And it was quite an easy tune to pick up. And I'm playing it, saying, you inspired this melody, and I start playing it, and then he started singing along.
Mm-hmm.
He picked it up and to hear Ali's voice singing this tune that I'd written. And I did a few other bits of his,
Mm-hmm.
and he invited me to go and stay. I'll teach you, come and stay. And you know what? I never got south of Croydon. And in terms of regrets and life taking a left turn, which it did for me, it's one of those things. You always think that these certainties are going to be there and these people are going to be there. And eventually I realized you've got to actually become that for other people, because all those people that we know and love aren't around anymore, dropping like flies. And I think that what you're doing is great.
Thank you very much, James.
You've really got your chops done. You've really got your SHIT together.
I mean, the thing is as well with the main thing with the Malian, with this kind of is really the groove. Just that.
Yeah.
When I was just playing that which is based around the sea. So just keeping that going, so that then the singer can come on top of you, and then just really, and that's what's nice about the music. It's more of a communal kind of style. You're not showboating and all that stuff. It's happy kind of, playing together. I just want to touch upon this blues label that Farka Touré got, because when we say a lot of times I say desert blues and Saharan blues, but really the reason that I guess I'm saying that is because Malian blues is, I would say, is 90% Malian, indigenous music, and maybe 10% is an influence from American music or less, but predominantly it's a Malian style of music. It's not something that's been taken from John Lee Hooker, and I think that was a misconception with Farka Touré, was that he was bringing in a lot of the American blues into his style, and he didn't. It was only a very small influence I think he had.
Well,
maybe one song, maybe one song that he did in his set was what you could call American blues,
I think it was about marketing.
Right, yeah.
And if you can sell the blues to people who have managed to get their head around the blues because of Eric Clapton, then, if you stick the blues label on something, then people are maybe more likely to accept it and swallow it. But it's kind of disregarding an entire continent. Of course there are similarities, but like Davy Graham drew similarities between Irish music and Indian music. He could hear it, because we've all got things that are fundamentally the same to us, and the way that we sing, the way that we play, we're bound to. But I wouldn't know what to call it. It's a bit like the indigenous population of the country across the Atlantic. Some Herbert turned up there intruding and decided they were all Indians, and to this day they're called Red Indians. And I suppose that we think of that music being called blues. It's just an easy label, but it's we're losing a lot of knowledge. I think it's like that. It's.
Well, I mean, because Farka Touré he knew a lot of Mandi. Was it called Manding or Mandinka?
Mendi.
Music.
Mendi. Mandi. Yeah.
But the interesting thing about Farka Touré was, coming back, I just want to say one of my favorite groups ever of all time, apart from the Beatles, is the Super Rail Band.
Yeah.
And their guitar players are killing it, just like incredible rhythm, singing, percussion. If anybody wants to start with African music, start with that band, the Super Rail Band from Mali. That's and Salaf Keita.
Well, everyone did their apprenticeships in there, didn't they? Everyone sort of went through that band. I think that's the sound of musicians that play for hours and hours and hours regularly. They're that good.
Yeah.
I mean, I did get to Morocco once for a week and spent the time in bed with food poisoning, and there was a house band down in the lobby or in the courtyard where the people were having food in this hotel, and they were playing beautiful Moroccan style, but I realized they were kind of Spandau Ballet songs, or they were playing the hits of pop hits, but with that lovely kind of mysterious, and they were really good musicians as well.
Yeah.
And you could tell that this is a gig where they're getting a bit of money to play in the lobby of this hotel. But I thought, I want to follow them and find where they actually play. Because you get bands like, you know, the Millimani Park Orchestra from Tanzania that just play and play and play. And it's a level of musicianship, which, I mean, I think you put a lot of time in, and I really need to start practicing. But if you put the time and the devotion in, and it's about really devoting yourself to something, you know, and Ali Farka traveled at a time in his life when he was terminally ill, as I then realized. You know, the news came through that he died, and I couldn't even cry. I just got a headache. I couldn't believe it. It was no. I think it's about having a responsibility to the music, where you might want to just stay at home with your family when you're dying, but he knew he had to get out and keep delivering that. S.E. Roji was the same, recovering from heart surgery, but needing to go out and play, and it cost him his life, and just keeping moving forward, you know.
One thing, when we were just today, I was just reading a little bit about Ali Farka Touré's life, and for this, in preparation for this, and one thing I found out was interesting. He was actually an ambulance driver and a chauffeur.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, it's like crazy.
Well, I think giving service, and somebody sort of, it came out that he'd made X amount of money from the Rai Kuda album. And again, that was a way of
talking Timbuktu.
Well, Rai Kuda's brilliant, and he played beautifully on that record. And, you know, but I think it was a way of making this palatable, Ali's music palatable for a wider audience, was to get people like Rai Kuda. They did the same with Johnny Hooker, getting Santana to come in and play with him just so that he would sell more albums. But the money that he made went into an irrigation scheme. He didn't spend it all on garbage and fast cars, and it all. He invested that money in something that would last for the foreseeable future, bringing fresh water. And he was digging those trenches with bone cancer. He was out there digging the trenches, getting his hands dirty, to help lay the pipes and to make sure that was, I mean, that's a great man, isn't it? You know, he's thinking of others.
That was a great album, talking Timbuktu, with him, his son Wacom Kuda, if I said that right, and John Patitucci on double bass. John Patitucci used to play with Dave Weckl. It's like a fusion bass player. Yeah, he's like you're kind of like you know, top fusion. My twin brother, identical twin brother, is a bass player, so he grew up listening to Mark King, Stanley Clarke, and then I found out that one of my brother's favorite bassists was playing double bass on that whole album, talking Timbuktu, John Patitucci. It was like, that's crazy.
Those records are nice. They're really nice, and it was great. It was great that the music got out, and it was. I think that. He would have been able to say to himself in the last sort of few months of his life that his life, I mean, he'd be 81 now, and it'd be lovely if he was around to give counsel and advice to people. He always said he would listen to the elderly because they know, and he would go to them for advice. It was part of that in the culture now. You know, we dismiss our elderly over here, don't we? But I think that he sort of knew that. I've strayed from my point completely now.
Well, sorry, it's my fault because I'm interrupting, and everyone's going to get really angry with me because I'm
no. I'm yabbering at you, but I think that he understood the importance of giving service, giving something back. You know.
So look at this photo here, James. This is the son of Ali. I had the fortune of being in concert with the son of Ali Farka Touré, Veer Farka Touré. This is at the Jazz Cafe, actually. Okay. And he was amazing. You know, he's kind of taken on his father's music, but also, you know, obviously taking it to a different place. You know, but obviously a very strong influence from Ali Farka Touré. So the kind of like, you know, it's running still. The music's still alive, as it were. And you know, he's definitely somebody I would recommend seeing. You know, Veer Farka Touré. He's very, very
well. He can play all his dad's stuff very accurately, but you're right, he's got his own thing. He's a bit of a rock star, isn't he? He's quite a sort of flash.
It's not you know, I mean, and it's amazing and beautiful that he's done that kind of, because he hasn't just want to copy his father, you know.
Well, no, I think getting back to what I was going to say, that his father raised his children. Ali raised his children to be self-sufficient, so that doing what he did with the money, investing it in this to provide fresh water for the community, he knew that his kids would be able to look after themselves as well. I think that he would have been able to say that his life had been an absolute success. He couldn't have wished for a more successful use of his life, his gift.
Absolutely.
He used his gifts absolutely, and a lot of us don't.
And he didn't hoard the money to himself and build a big
no,
and say it's all mine. I've got the Bentley, I've got the Porsche, and the poor man down the road. Now stuff you. I'm going to keep all the money to myself.
Yeah.
You know? It wasn't that attitude, was it, at all?
And it also wasn't all about him.
It was a musician's. It's a musician's attitude, sharing.
Well, he realized, with music, it's something that we're all lucky to be able to play, and anyone that thinks that they're it because they can play this stuff, he wasn't like that. He didn't need to have an ego. I mean, he could have. There are people that don't complete their mission. I keep talking about my friend Roji, but he hadn't achieved the recognition that he deserved and needed, and it was difficult seeing him in his 60s still trying to get that word across there, and he wasn't doing it for himself to gratify himself. He had something he wanted to get across, and so maybe that music will have its day. I know that there are a lot of young people listening to Ali Farka, and they're listening to Palm Wine too, and so the music continues, you know.
Well, James, one thing to finish on is a really good thought, is that these performers from Mali and Senegal and this, you know, this amazing area of the world, the one thing that I love about them is that, you know, when you meet them, they don't have the concept like in the West. We tend to have this concept, you know, I'm famous, I'm rich, and you're a fan. You know, they don't seem to have that. It's a very personal one-to-one thing with these musicians, and you know, I've met, you know, super famous African musicians, and then I met them 10 years later when they've had success, and they're still, hey man, come on, you know, there's no you know, oh, it's a green room only, you've got to be famous and rich to enter here. You know, they're very grounded, even with when they've achieved success, they always seem to have that kind of really cool, chilled out attitude.
Yeah, and I think there's also a childlike quality to a lot of musicians. A great musician's joke is, and Ali, the last time I saw him, when I'd given him this signed Johnny Hooker album, and as I was leaving, I saw him in the corner of the room, and he's showing people, hey, look, and they're like, wow, he's like, Johnny Hooker, you know, and he's like a fan. You know, he was a music lover. There was something very, very sweet about that. You know, he still loved his music, and I've seen that in a lot of great players. Simon Prager, the ragtime player who was taught by Reverend Gary Davis, taught him to play. Simon's a great guy, and he said, you know, little boy says to his daddy, when I grow up, I want to be a musician. And the father says, now, come on, son, don't be silly. You can't do both. It's so true. You get it? You know, it's so true. We're all like, look at this. I mean, this is either sort of mental illness or I'm just a kid, really. I'm still a fan.
So let's just to get back to Ali. Did you see that Martin Scorsese documentary when Corey Harris?
I did.
Corey Harris, is that the name? Corey Harris.
I think he's in it. And one of the bits that I loved is when
there's Corey Haim, you know, from the Lost Boys.
That's right.
Corey Haim. That's not that. It's Corey Harris.
Well,
and he went, didn't he? He went to learn some of what he was playing. I can't remember. I haven't seen that documentary for years.
I've got a copy of this somewhere, and one of the things I'm just going to briefly play a tiny little bit, just a tiny little bit, because I did notice, because he was looking at you could tell he was a music fan, because they dig out a clip of Otis Redding, and Ali's sitting there with his friends, and they've got it, you know, in a darkened room, and then Otis Redding's on the screen singing "Try a Little Tenderness," and again he goes, like a lot of men all over the world of his generation that would see Otis Redding. So he did listen to a lot of soul and blues and stuff.
He worked at radio. He worked on Mali radio, so didn't he? So
he knew all of that. And I always thought, you know, that I got sunshine on a cloudy day. You know, I thought that was, you know, there are little shades of that soul music in some of Ali's stuff. You could tell there's little inflections in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I like the idea of fusion. It's not this sort of, I don't believe in, you know, the idea of purity.
Because there's what people don't realize is in West Africa, it's a Muslim, it's the main religion is Islam, so they have a massive Arabic influence, and they, in those countries, like for example in Tunisia and Morocco and Mali, they're going to listen to Arabic music, they're going to listen to Egyptian music, they're going to know, they're going to know Lebanese music far more than they're going to know American music. Much more, so if you mention Turkish or Egyptian music, they're going to be listening to that in Tunisia and in Algeria and in Mali, so it's, I think sometimes in the West, we just listen to Western music. That's all we listen to, and we're more narrow-minded than the guys in Africa, who are not narrow-minded at all, because they're listening to the whole world.
Yeah.
They're listening to music from everywhere, where sometimes we just listen to English language music, not all of us, but you know what I mean? So
I do.
And so we kind of we don't realize that these African musicians, especially in West Africa and whatever, they're getting their influences from everywhere. Lots of different
a lot of country music's popular. I remember one of the problems Andy Kershaw encountered when he went on some trip to, I can't remember where he was in Africa, and he was saying, I realized when I got there that there were more African records in Crouch End than there were in this town. Everywhere I looked, it was Kenny Rogers, Kenny Rogers, Kenny Rogers.
Doesn't surprise me.
He went all the way out there looking for Africa, for indigenous music, and all he found was this cheesy, awful pseudo country music. I've got. I was just going to try and read a couple of bits. Have we got time?
We certainly have. We got 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left.
Okay, I found a couple of things while I was going through my collection of stuff, and it was A Life in the Day of Ali Farka Touré.
So what newspaper is this from?
This was the Times, and they've still got this, A Life in the Day of so-and-so. So this would have been from about 1998 or something like that. So I'll just read a few little bits towards the end. I take the Quran with me, and I have my prayer mat with me all the time. It has a compass sewn into it to show which direction is Mecca. In the West, houses and rooms are full of things. It's very different here. There is no electricity, no ventilation, and no air conditioning, but the houses aren't hot because of the way they're built. In the West, I think it is too deluxe. I don't have that obsession with shopping that many musicians have. They buy lots of things. They're sick. I don't have any curiosity for that. In my village, there are no means of communication, no telephone lines, no faxes, and it can be difficult because if I need to speak to my record company in London, I have to get into my car, a Peugeot, and drive to Bamako, a 2-day journey each way. I have to cross the River Niger, which is 1.5 kilometers across in the wet season and 200 meters wide when the river is dry. There is a little car ferry, which is very expensive. So if there's a fax or message for me, it's flown in by helicopter. And when I return from my tours in Europe or America, I have no problems with arriving back. My Malian wife and children are all very excited. First, I go to my fields. Then I look at my fruit trees, and everything that I've forgotten comes back. Then I go to see the animals. I prefer village life to the town. Towns bring bad news. We live very well, much better than in Bamako. We don't need any security in my village. My children sleep outside on the sand in the hot weather. I sleep on a straw mat with a cover on it. Beds make you lazy. I don't like them. They aren't good for your body, not if you're a worker. In the hotels in the West, I often put the cover on the floor and sleep there.
Wow. Cool
and
fella.
I heard that about him, and his preoccupation was the land, his family. And yes, he eventually, I think when he first came over here, his accommodation was dire. So they managed to fix him up with a really nice posh hotel. And when Nick or someone turned up to pick him up the next day, they found that he hadn't used his really nice 4-poster double bed or whatever. He slept on the floor because he felt, it was better for him.
More like home.
Yeah, quite something, that guy. He really was. Yeah.
And well, thank you very much, James, for sharing.
It's really lovely to be able to remember him.
Yeah.
I had most of the albums. I know that I think Jumping John, Osric Tentacles, former Osric Tentacles, he thinks I've got one of his incredible string band albums, and he's got my red album of Ali Farka Touré. And I think we're having a standoff about it. We'll have to meet up one day. I'd love to see him again. But yeah, it's great that the music's up online. And in fact, a lot, if you go onto the website, you know, you go and check out World Circuit, they're still going. And I think there's a really good job of keeping Ali's music in the frame, re-releasing things, anniversary editions. And I think, you know, was it The Source came out on vinyl for the first time.
If you want to hear some great guitar playing, The Source.
And Synchronicity is on The Source, and that's the one piece of music that
it's great.
There are sections of it that I can't play, and it's so beautiful.
I don't think anybody can play.
No, you could. That's your homework. Next time I talk to you, we can do our show about the new Seekers or whatever we're going to talk about next, or ABBA or something. No!
Don't tell anybody. But we know what we're talking about next. Don't tell anyone. But you know what we're talking about next. I'll give you a secret. I'll give you. No.
Going to give me a clue.
Can I give you a clue?
Okay.
Paul Simon.
Is that a clue, or that's what it is?
That's a clue. That's a clue. Paul Simon.
Okay.
Think about it.
We're not going to be talking about Elvis, are we? Graceland.
I like that lip.
I met Elvis's drummer once, DJ Fontana, and he played great. And I was very interested. We both talked about our hair. I was very pleased when I met DJ Fontana in the early 90s to see that he had more hair than he had when he played with Elvis in the 50s. How does that work?
I don't know, but I think I need to chat with him.
I want the secret, you know?
Anyway, James, it's been amazing. Thank you. And God bless you.
A lot of things I would like to have said about this guy, but I think we've covered it. And
no, you've done.
Go and listen to some of this guy, you know?
Listen to James, guys. He's the best guitar player. One of my favorite, you know, if not my favorite, massive influence on my style on James as well. You know, and you know, it all starts with he's the source, isn't he? He is the source.
He's the
source,
the top man, really. And he was very responsible about that, and he didn't abuse his position, and he did everything he possibly could with that gift he had. Well, it's a shame he's not here, but that was a really well-lived life that he had. 66 years. It's not long, but yeah, bless him. Good.
Okay then, James, thanks a million for coming back. You're going to come again. Everyone loves you. Sorry for me interrupting you all the time.
No, I think you needed to. I'm glad you interrupted me with some guitar playing, because it's also made me realize I need to practice for 3 hours a day as well.
Well, even maybe we all need to practice 3 hours a day, and we can do that on a Sunday.
Yeah, I'll probably have to move somewhere where the neighbors are deaf, you know.
Well,
that's the plan.
That's the plan. So I'll catch up with you soon for the next video we're going to do. The next
Please
chat.
do.
And take care, my friend.
Well, hopefully we'll see each other this year.
Yep. And we will.
And you know, if you're feeling worried and anxious and having a difficult time in lockdown, then put on some Ali Farka Touré.
Absolutely.
That's what that music is there for.
It is. Okay then, guys. Take care. God bless. Speak soon. Take care. Bye-bye.